Access has a cost, and most people learn that too late. Not everyone gets the map to your inner life, because some people do not want closeness. They want leverage. That is the part modern advice skips. You sit across from someone in a quiet room. The lights are low. The conversation turns honest, and it feels almost noble to tell the full story. The fear, the old humiliation, the thing you still have not made peace with. And sometimes that trust is met with care. But sometimes it is catalogued, stored, and brought back later with perfect timing. That is the awkward truth people do not like to say out loud. Vulnerability can build connection, but in the wrong hands it becomes targeting data. The wrong person does not move toward your pain to protect it. They study it. They learn where shame still lives. Then, when control starts to matter more than affection, they press exactly there. So this is about building an inner citadel. 5 Stoic moves that help you feel deeply without becoming easy to penetrate. We start with one rule that changes everything. Do not reveal a wound to someone who has not earned the right to protect it. Access is earned, and that changes how you think about openness. Telling the truth is healthy. Handing someone unrestricted access to your softest spots is something else entirely. That distinction is awkward in real life because honesty feels virtuous in the moment. You are sitting across from someone. The conversation turns personal, and part of you wants to prove trust by saying everything. Stoicism draws a cleaner line. Speak truthfully. Yes. Abandon yourself. No. There is a difference between intimacy and giving someone the coordinates to your collapse. The Stoics were not training cold people. They were protecting the ruling center of a person. Your judgment, your will, your character cannot be placed in someone else's custody without a cost. The moment your worth depends on how another person frames your past, your pain, or your insecurity, you have already handed over too much. That is the deeper danger, not the insult itself, not even the betrayal. It is the quiet moment after, when their words make you question your own center. That is why the first break in the wall is usually shame. Tool 1. Name the wedge of shame before they use it against you. Shame is not verdict. That is the first thing to hold on to, because the attack usually works only when some part of you has already accepted the charge. Picture a late-night conversation that feels safe. You say, "I have always felt behind." Maybe it is about money, status, or the sense that everyone else figured life out sooner. The room is quiet. The guard drops, and the confession feels honest. Then, months later, during an argument, the same person throws it back at you with surgical timing. That is why nothing works out for you. You are insecure. This is where it gets awkward. What sounded like connection was really data collection. The same pattern shows up in cleaner clothes at work. A co-worker hears that public speaking makes you tense. Later, in a meeting, they say, "You sound unsure of yourself." No shouting. No obvious cruelty. Just pressure applied to an old bruise. That matters, because manipulators rarely need force when shame is already available. Their advantage is not your pain itself. Their advantage is your agreement with the meaning attached to it. Shame says this wound proves I am lesser. Stoicism says, slow down. A bruise in your history is not the same thing as rot in your character. Marcus Aurelius keeps forcing that distinction. Reputation can be touched. Memory can be touched. Emotion can be touched. Character is measured by how you live now. So the practical rule is simple. If it is true, correct it. If it is weaponized, do not kneel to it. Write down 2 columns tonight. In the first, list what you fear people could use against you. In the second, write what each item actually says about your character today. If that second column keeps coming up blank, you are still treating history like identity. Naming the wedge helps, but it does not stop the body from reacting. The next move is learning how to take the hit without signing the story. Tool 2. Practice non-assent and feel the hit without signing the story. Pause before belief. That sounds small until you are triggered and your body wants to hand the wheel to the first thought that shows up. A family member says, "You are too sensitive." That is why people walk over you. Heat rises fast. Your chest tightens. You start building a case in your head before they even finish the sentence. Or an old message appears from someone who used to confuse you. "No one will ever understand you the way I did." And there it is again. The pull to answer. Explain. Reopen the whole thing. This is the awkward part. The mind calls it honesty, but a lot of the time it is just reflex. The Stoics had a clean word for that first surge. Impression. It arrives on its own. You do not choose the sting, the tension, or the rush of old memory. But the next step is different. You do choose whether to assent. You choose whether to treat that first thought like a command. Non-assent is not pretending nothing happened. It is refusing to let the first interpretation become law. That is where sovereignty actually lives. The insult can land. Your body can react. Fine. But pain is not the same thing as agreement. You can feel the hit without signing the story attached to it. Use one sentence in the moment. That is an impression, not an instruction. Then give yourself 1 clean minute. In that minute, separate 3 things. What was said, what you felt, what your mind added on top. If you can keep those from blending together, you did not surrender the wheel. That gap is everything, but the mind still loves drama. So the next move is learning how to strip the scene down to bare facts before it grows teeth. Tool 3. Use objective description to drain the poison out of the attack. Facts without theater. That is harder than it sounds, because the mind hates leaving a wound alone once it has been touched. Someone says, "Everyone knows what you are really like." The sentence lands, and within seconds, your mind starts building a whole story around it. They are exposing me. I am being humiliated. My past is catching up to me. I will never outgrow this. Or maybe it happens in a meeting. We are not sure you can handle this level. And before anyone says another word, your brain has already filled in the rest. They think, I am weak. I am about to lose my place. This always happens. That jump is fast. And honestly, it feels embarrassingly automatic. This is where the Stoic move matters. Objective description means stripping the event down to what actually occurred, with no drama added. Not because the moment is pleasant, not because the comment was fair, but because emotional exaggeration turns a cut into a full internal collapse. So instead of saying, "They publicly destroyed me," say, "A person made a comment about my past in front of others. Instead of saying, "I was exposed," say, "Information I dislike was mentioned aloud." It sounds cold at first, maybe even unnatural, but that is exactly why it works. Clean language reduces panic. It brings the moment back to size. This is not weakness. It is disarmament. The other person may throw the spark, but your imagination does not have to become the gasoline. Use one rule here. Describe what happened without adjectives, predictions, assess, or mind reading. Open your notes app and write 3 lines. What literally happened? What I added emotionally? What remains true without the story? If line 1 is tiny and line 2 is huge, the attack was growing inside you. Once you stop turning the hit into theater, you start seeing something else clearly. A lot of what you thought was yours was only ever on loan. Tool 4. Treat externals as borrowed, not owned. Borrowed, not possessed. That one shift changes a lot. Because most suffering in relationships starts when you quietly turn a gift into a guarantee. A partner says, "After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me." Hidden inside that line is a claim of ownership. Not just over your gratitude, but over your peace, your loyalty, and your emotional posture. Or a friend grows distant, and your first thought is, "How could they do this after all these years?" That reaction usually means something deeper was happening under the surface. You were not only enjoying their presence, you were treating it like fixed property. The Stoics put affection, approval, attention, and even the continuity of relationships into the category of externals. Important. Yes. Beautiful. Yes. But never fully yours to command. That sounds severe until you see what it gives back. The moment you stop acting as if another person must stay, approve, or reassure you, your identity comes off rented land. That does not make love smaller. It makes it cleaner. You stop squeezing permanence out of something that was never promised to be permanent. You stop turning connection into insurance against emptiness. That is uncomfortable to admit, because a lot of attachment feels noble right up until it starts bargaining. This also shifts power. People can manipulate you when they sense their presence holds your center together. But if you understand that affection can change, loyalty can fade, and approval can disappear, then loss still hurts without becoming total collapse. Use one rule here. Receive affection with gratitude, not dependence. Then ask yourself, at the end of the day, did I seek connection, or did I seek emotional insurance? If your mood fell apart because someone delayed, withdrew, or disapproved, you may be treating the borrowed as owned. And once you stop building on borrowed ground, you are ready for the quiet test most people avoid. Being alone without needing an audience to feel real. Tool 5. Build self-reliance through solitude. Not withdrawal. Stand without witnesses. That is the test. Because a self that only feels solid when someone is watching is still standing on borrowed ground. Picture a Friday night with no reply, no plans, no reassuring little signal that you still matter to someone. The reflex is almost automatic. Reach for the phone. Post something. Message someone first. Go. Turn silence into noise before it starts saying anything uncomfortable. Or you leave a relationship that ran on emotional intensity and the quiet feels almost unbearable. Not because silence is dangerous, but because no one is there to reflect you back to yourself. That is an awkward thing to admit, but it is where the real work starts. Solitude reveals whether your identity is rooted or rented. If you cannot be alone without chasing validation, then some of what looked like openness was really dependency with better branding. Stoic solitude is not isolation. It is training. It is where you learn that your mind can hold you without immediate rescue. Your values can organize you without applause. Your peace can survive a night with no witness. That is the inner citadel in practice. Not a dramatic posture, just a stable self that does not collapse when comfort, attention, or intimacy goes quiet. This is also why manipulative people struggle with someone who can be alone. A person who can sit with discomfort cannot be baited as easily. A person who does not need instant reassurance is harder to corner. Use one rule. Before I seek comfort from someone else, I sit with myself for 10 clean minutes. Then track it for 1 week. 1 point for 10 undistracted minutes alone. 1 point for not using your phone to escape discomfort. 1 point for writing the sentence, "Without approval, I still am." If that score stays low, your inner support system is still too outsourced. That brings up the obvious objection, and it needs a direct answer. Boundaries do not make you cold. Stand without witnesses. And one fear shows up fast. People assume boundaries make you cold. They assume guarding your inner life means becoming distant, avoidant, or impossible to love. That sounds plausible on the surface, but it falls apart the moment you look closely. Stoicism does not ask you to feel less. It asks you to expose yourself with judgment. There is a real difference between intimacy and impulsive disclosure. There is a real difference between trust and handing someone emotional access they have not earned. Mature people do not hide everything. They pace access. Strength is not saying no one gets in. Strength is saying not everyone gets all the way in. And no one gets there without character. That is what makes connections safer and cleaner. An open gate is not courage. It is exposure. Wise gates make deeper love possible. That filter matters because sometimes the turning point is not dramatic at all. It is just the slow realization that someone was not listening to understand you. They were listening to map you. They remembered your fears, your shame, your private language, and then reached for it the moment they needed leverage. The line that fits here is simple. I thought I was being honest. What I was really being was available to the wrong person. That is the moment exposure stops looking like courage and starts looking like poor gatekeeping. That poor gatekeeping is exactly why this needs to become a practice, not just an insight. For the next 7 days, run a simple test and keep it honest. For the first 2 days, write down your 3 biggest shame triggers. On day 3, use 1 full minute of non-assent before replying to anything that hooks you. On day 4, take 1 painful memory and rewrite it in plain factual language. On day 5, name 1 external you have been treating like a guarantee. On day 6, sit in silence for 10 minutes without reaching for reassurance. On day 7, review where you still hand people the knife. Then score each day with 5 questions. Did I protect a private wound? Did I pause before reacting? Did I strip emotion from the facts? Did I refuse to lean on approval? Did I stand alone without panic? A stronger score means your sovereignty is becoming real. What you protect, you can heal. That is the point of all of this. Strength is not staying in the room and absorbing endless disrespect just to prove you can take it. Strength is knowing when to withdraw access, keep your dignity, and leave without performing your pain for an audience. That is the real citadel. Not hardness, not bitterness, not revenge, just a self that cannot be easily occupied. That idea sounds simple, but living it is uncomfortable because part of you still wants to be understood by the person who crossed the line. Let that go. Protect your wounds until they become wisdom. Protect your peace until it becomes character. Do not hand them the knife and call it intimacy. Build your citadel and let your peace become untouchable.